From the time I left the corporate world to go back and study theology in seminary to the time I was then ordained and included in the appointment process, and through my ministry and through surviving the campfire and now into retirement, there's one verse that really sustains me, and it will continue to sustain me. And it comes from Jeremiah 29:11, where it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Upon my reflection, my greatest joy seems to have been a humbling and edifying experience of God's active presence in the here and now, as well as experiencing God's active presence in others and situations where God worked with grace and mercy. Something that I've encouraged all people in all my services that I've done over the years in the ordained ministry, and that is to trust, believe, and have an active faith in God, remembering that life is for living, and love is for giving, and joy is for passing around. And we're able to do this by God's grace, that grace which is forgiveness, but also that grace which completes us and makes us more than what we can be on our own. That grace and much more of God's grace is available to us now and forevermore.
John 15:5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a person abides in me and I in them, they will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. I have tried to be rooted in Christ and have Christ flow through me. Sometimes I would get in the way of Christ, but my success in ministry is proportional to my closeness to Christ. My greatest joy is helping people grow in Christ, to have them experience the incredible love and kindness of Jesus. My happy place is to help others become more and more like Jesus. This quote says so much from Kent Hughes. Our lives are like photographic plates, and prayer is like a time exposure to God. As we expose ourselves to God for a half an hour or perhaps 2 hours a day, Jesus' image is imprinted more and more upon us. More and more we absorb the image of Jesus' character, Jesus' love, Jesus' wisdom, and Jesus' way of dealing with life and people. I'd like to offer just 3 suggestions. First, remain rooted in Christ. Jesus promises that if you abide in Jesus, you will produce much fruit, and that fruit will last. Secondly, challenging times in ministry are opportunities to rely on God. My faith deepened the most while pastoring a very difficult church, and if it was only 1 out of 7, I feel very blessed. I could no longer rely on myself, but had to turn to God for help. And third and last, self-care. Make sure you give yourself a gift of spiritual retreats. I think of my mentor, John Dotson, early in ministry. He said, take time to be with God alone and get refreshed. Develop a life outside of ministry, hobbies, interests, and friends. And finally, keep up a very high fun quotient. Do what restores you. Give yourself permission to do what energizes you. I'd like to finish with this quote from Pierre de Chardin. You are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Ephesians 6, serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord. And the other is Jesus, and truly I say to you, as you serve the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did it also to me. When I have been at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, which is the largest prison in the world for women, and a group of us go in for a 3.5-day weekend, and we meet shattered women holding on by a fingernail, and we just pour, with Christ's help, the love of God into their lives, and we listen to them, and we hear their hearts, and we watch over that period of time God bring deep healing and hope into their lives. And this is through a ministry called Kairos Prison Ministry, and we go in once a month, and we watch God do astonishing, transformative work. And I'm grateful to the Methodist Church for introducing me to this ministry, and it's something I will be continuing until my dying breath, Lord willing. Many times someone would approach me and ask me to do something that felt like I would be diving off of a high dive into a teacup. But I clung to Christ and I gave it a try, and each time one yes led to another yes. And to be brief, Karen Watson asked me years and years ago to lead a retreat at her church in Calusa, and I had never led a retreat. But that led to more retreats, which I find incredibly fulfilling, because you get to be with people intensely for a period of time, which also led to the Walk to Emmaus, which I got to participate in 5 different Walk to Emmaus communities all over California and Nevada, which led to Chrysalis, which is the teenage version of that, which led to Kairos. And none of that would have happened if I had stayed in my little safe cocoon. So that's what I would share with my dear colleagues, is say yes, trust God, and watch God do the rest.